If a day's like 8 or so hours and you're losing 2 to search and say an hour to formatting, it's like 40% of the day is gone. In the UK is what, 37 million working people? I think we connect to 25 million. So if you go down the pub and 10 people in a room have got a job, 6 of those CVs we can find and we can search again.
Thank you for joining me on this week's episode of the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I'm delighted to welcome to you all today Lawson Leefe, who is Director at Hedera Hiring, who are a very niche specialist within the utilities space. Very interesting market, actually. But in recent years, he has become a developer of an amazing service called CVME, which is a really interesting conversation around becoming more time efficient as recruiters and recruitment business founders, why he developed the product, what problems he sees as a business owner himself. And this is where I think Lawson is very, very different, because unlike some providers to the industry that set up AI and tech products, he is still running a recruitment business. So he sees the problems, he understands the issues, he wants to make his recruiters more efficient, he wants to deliver better results to his clients. And that's what got me really excited about doing this episode. Now, there is a pre-warning. Lawson, ironically, for a developer, he actually didn't have a brilliant signal. So there are a couple of times where he might fade out. And if you are watching this, you will see the glitch. But we're hoping that our editing will get rid of most of it, but apologies in advance because it's no reflection on the quality of what Lawson talks about. We do say in the episode that if you click on the link to CVME and you end up doing a demo, please mention the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast so that Lawson knows that's where you came from. So without further ado, let's jump in. This is Lysha Holmes and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast, and I am very excited because, to be honest with you, my preamble with my guests sometimes takes a couple of minutes and other times I think, shit, I better press record, and this is one of those where we've been talking about absolutely about 20 different topics before we've even started. So I cannot wait for you to get to know this week's guest, and we are going to be going on a bit of a journey as to how he's arrived where he is with his career and the business that he has founded. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my fellow alumni, actually. We've worked in the same company.
Yes.
At the same time, I hasten to add, I'm much older than you. Lawson Leefe, who is the director at Hedera Hiring and the founder and developer at CVME. Welcome to you today. How are you?
I'm very good, yes, and thank you for the introduction, Lysha. So, yes, very good and happy to be here.
Very happy to have you here. Now, you're not far from me, are you? You're up in the north.
That's right, yeah. So I think we sort of mentioned this when we first spoke a little while ago. So yeah, I'm literally just down the road. So I'm Whitefield, so we're just on the sort of very edge there. But I think you're at the road, aren't you? Yeah.
If you're not, I mean, I seem to have this theme with the last few episodes where I'm saying, right, for someone who's never been to Whitefield, which is probably about a 20-minute drive out of Manchester Central. I grew up in Prestwich, which is literally the next town up.
Yeah.
Do as a one-liner as to why you should jump on a tram and go and see Whitefield.
To be honest, I would say because of its proximity to Prestwich.
Yeah.
I think that, look, it's really nice. I think that what's the common thing they say, which I don't think is actually true anymore, but I think that what used to be the adage was if you want to go and drink and have loads of places to drink, Prestwich is the place to go. And actually for restaurants, then probably Whitefield.
Yeah.
These days, I mean, Prestwich is having a massive glow up, and
Absolutely.
I think you're just about to crack ground on sort of redoing the big
Field
sort of
Suite.
centre there, Longfield Street. Yeah. So that looks mega, and there's so many good little restaurants and places
I
there.
have to tell you,
Yeah, it's good.
one of my favourite places to eat is Cotto, which is in Whitefield.
Cotto's a belter.
It's
It's
a
one of about
belter
7
Italian.
Italians in Whitefield, so you're absolutely spoiled for choice if you like Italians. So
but I've been to them all, and I think that's the one I go back to every single time because they do this salmon dish and it's just amazing. So, well, thank you for that. I think the proximity to Prestwich, but also Manchester, you've got Park, you've got brilliant public transport. Whitefield is one of those really lovely northern towns where it's, 1 minute you can be, seeing the hills of Ramsbottom and the Peak Districts, and the next minute you're 10 minutes on a tram into Manchester Central. So welcome to you today, Lawson. So tell us a bit about your story. Tell us about your journey into recruitment and how you've ended up launching.
Yeah, sure. So where do I start? So I can't even remember when I first started in recruitment now. I think it was about 2009. I
Right.
started at S3, did a year there. Look, tough business, but I mean, you are really going to learn a lot about how to do this properly, I think, work in a business like that. And then I moved over to what was prime time, I think, and that's where there's a bit of an overlap potentially there. So prime time, which then became Corden. And I got to the point where, I was, managing recruiter in the business, had about 10 or 12 people working for me. And I think that my frustrations at that point were with things that probably could be automated and things that could be a little bit, easier to deliver. So, those were principally that searches would take a very long time. You look out across the sales floor and, for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours of the day, it'd be on job boards looking at one CV after another. And that would just take maybe 30 seconds if you're quite quick per CV. But, if you're looking at a batch of, say, 200, then there goes an hour or 2 hours. And then in addition to that as well, when you found CVs that were really good, we did, take a lot of care to make sure they look good for our clients. So, we would take a bit of time to prepare them and send them out. And that would take half an hour document if you've got like a long PDF. And, my frustration was that's so much time that's going out the day. So I guess from a productivity point of view, if a day's like 8 or so hours and you're losing two to search and say an hour to, to formatting, it's like 40% of the day is gone. So, I was of the view that, these are probably solvable problems. And so I started learning how to code. So I started learning how to code back in, when would this have been now, like 2016, maybe about 10 years ago. And started looking, okay, well, look, could this be done? And I guess that there's a lot of challenges that come with actually getting a solution to that to work. But principally, what you're effectively looking to do is to get text out of things in a way that's really reliable and then categorize it. And then from there, you can make assessments about whether it's right or wrong. And that's really what we're doing as recruiters. We've got a brief from the client that tells us what they want. And then we've got a document over here that tells us what someone can do. And it's really, are these the same? Are they relevant? And obviously, you've then got a qualification piece around motivations, which AI isn't going to do
Nope.
at this stage,
Yeah.
But really that initial pass and that sort of 3 hours a day where we're spending those time on that task, probably is a solvable problem. So yeah, many years later, I think we finally cracked it. So yeah, sort of now have that out to market. But ultimately, I left that
When did
business.
you launch CVME?
So we brought it to market about a year ago. So it's been going about a year, but we had the tech working and solved within my business. So I mean, I left, left Cordant around about sort of 7 years ago now. Started Hedera Hiring, and we really use that as a vehicle to retain the IP around what we were developing, but then secondly, just to make sure these were robust tools that were working. So
In the real world, so to speak, because
in the real world, yeah.
that's what I think makes you a very special guest, because you're not, I mean, nothing disingenuous about what I'm about to say, by the way, especially to my sponsor pager. But I think because you know what it means to actually run a recruitment business, work in a recruitment business, what the recruiters need, it gives you a very different edge as a developer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I must say actually, we sort of started trying to solve those problems really to address our frustrations and to try and get better at being leaner and quicker and able to deliver with ultimately with less. And I think, the intention wasn't really to sort of bring a product to market. It was let's build something that works for us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I think we got to the view that this is pretty robust and it works really well. Actually, there probably is a product there. So as I say, about 12 months ago, took the decision to bring that to market. We knew it was robust and it worked. And really now the challenge is one of marketing and just
Getting
which is,
the name out there. Well, come
yeah.
back to CV. Just I want to understand. So your
Yeah.
actual business, Hedera Hiring. What does that? What you're in? Is it civils and engineering?
It is the sexy world of utilities is what we do. So really that's everything from someone in the street there who'd be digging out the ground ready to go and put some pipe or some cable or whatever it is down there, right the way through to someone then who would manage and run that business and all the sort of infrastructure involved in sort of managing and sort of getting those projects delivered properly. But it's a good industry. I think that principally, there's never a point in time in which people don't need those things. It's largely recession proof. I would say it doesn't really, sort of alter and dip up and down
with
the pound
COVID
up and
or
down.
another pandemic
Yeah,
or a
that's it. It's
world
all essential
war.
services. It has to be delivered, but it's a market that I've worked in for a long time to understand very deeply. So yeah, no, that's what we've done for a long time.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, I love finding out about people's niche industries. I think it's really important. So,
Yeah.
CVME, go on, give us a what does it actually do? If I was a recruiter sat here now going, right, I'm not feeling very efficient and organized, what does CVME do?
Okay, cool. So there's two things that we do. So I'll sort of split that in two. So I think let's focus on the formatting piece first. So Yeah, I think my frustration at the time when I was working with Corden was that it would take us about half an hour probably, and then sometimes longer if you had a really long convoluted sort of PDF file to get these things looking good. So principally, what it does there is you can drag and drop any CV of any design of any length, pretty much in any file format. We can handle 10 at once, drag and drop it in there, and boom, it's going to come out in your branded template exactly as you want it to look. So we've got a really good template editor. You can make it look however you like. But ultimately, what that gives businesses back is a colossal amount of time. So I think we were just saying before we started here at the expo last week, which our first time going down there, which was great. But we were talking to people at the stand there, and it would genuinely take them, say, 40 minutes or longer, to do these sort of long CVs. And they're doing it all themselves. Why? Because they care about their branding in front of the client. So it's important to make it look nice. But ultimately, it's a massive waste of time. And if you're paying a senior consultant, whatever you're paying them to go and do that, most probably over half an hour, it's going to be north of 20 quid. And you've got a bottleneck. So if I've got to get 10 of these out by the end of the day, I do not have the time in the day to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, principally, we solve that problem. So we give people the ability to make it look however they want. And then we offer a really robust ability then just to drag and drop files on there, and boom, out it goes. So yeah, that's principally what it does on the
And then
form.
does it plug into their databases? The
Yeah,
CRM
so we connect now with about 21 different CRM and ATS systems. So, most of the big ones we support. So it's even easier at that point. You can just import it directly from the CRM. And then when you finish, boom, it gets written straight in there. Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that, the market is going to continue to evolve, isn't it? And I think that it's about recruiters having more time available to have the meaningful meetings, have the meaningful conversations. And if you care about brand, which we're all sort of probably a bit weary of talking about personal brand because it's been talked about for so long now, but I think it's really important to make sure it's seamless across all your different media formats, and that includes what you're sending out to
Yeah,
clients.
I agree. And I think that, it's one of the things that clients see the most. So, from a branding point of view, they may go and check out your website initially, and a lot of time and money goes into making sure websites are good. But actually, from a touch point, I think there's nothing the client sees more than that. So look, we already know that businesses do this, and effectively what we are providing them with is just the ability to do that way quicker for significantly less money. So that's what we do on the formatting side. But then the other thing we address is the other problem that we saw that sort of exists when I was back working at Corden, when you've got a team of 12 people and you've got this deathly silence, which is CV sourcing. So again, I think that's an even bigger time loss, and that's where a lot of the time goes in the day. So what we do there is we connect to this database of about 25 million CVs. We'll say that is UK specific, so it's not necessarily universal at this stage, but we do want it to be. But effectively, we can just give it a company URL, tell it a little bit about what we want. So we can just put job title and company URL as listed as that.
Yeah.
It will then go and research the business. It will go and find out regulatory environments it exists in, what a project would look like for that company. And it will then write the search, run the search, and do that at a rate of about 9,000 CVs a minute. And basically, what it's doing there is looking at every single profile and scoring them against a sort of editable set of criteria. But the quality of that is incredibly good. So it's about on par with senior consultants. But the speed in which you can deliver that is really what gives a massive time saving back. So yeah, so effectively what we're trying to solve for, as I say, is right, it takes a long time to find people, takes a long time to get them looking good at the end of that process. If we can take that out of the day and we can deliver a search in 30 seconds, we can get CVs done in 10 seconds, then instead of 3 hours and 40% of your day gone, we can reduce it down to a trivial amount. So
literally a trivial amount. You can be doing other stuff, and this is working in the background for you.
Yeah.
How do you integrate with things like LinkedIn and Pin, and does it work with things like that?
I think no, so we don't integrate with LinkedIn. I think we're very careful about that because there are plenty of instances now where businesses have taken data and manipulated data on LinkedIn. It's just going to get your account banned. So I'm very hesitant to look at that. And I think ultimately LinkedIn will always want to keep a proprietary, sort of method of doing it. In fact, they do sell a version of what we do, which is very slow and very expensive, but nonetheless they've got their own tool for that.
We'll probably get banned from sharing this podcast because we've said that.
Yes, well, hopefully not. But as I say, no, we're careful not to sort of use LinkedIn. I mean, it's a great resource, but ultimately the database we're connected to there offer a pretty massive reach. So, as a way of I suppose, as a bit of a thought experiment, what is the reach? In the UK is what, 37 million working people. I think we connect to 25 million. So if you go down the pub and 10 people in a room have got a job, 6 of those CVs we can find and we can search against. So it's pretty comprehensive in terms of its reach.
Comprehensive.
So yeah, that's what we do.
What's the kind of trajectory that you think CVME is on then? Like, where's the trajectory that we can see for you?
Okay, well, I think that's what we'd like is to really at this point just get more time back for recruiters and just to sort of really at this stage just start to just help more people. I think that we've got a pretty broad range of clients at the moment, from companies which have got a couple of hundred consultants in through to ones and twos.
Yeah.
I think that our challenge at the moment is one of marketing and raising awareness, I guess. So hence the reason we're going to the expo, and that's been
Being
really
on the
good for us.
podcast, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that I think that the other thing that we'd really like to see there is just engagement from the job boards, because I think that that is a better way of delivering search. And there's a number of sort of challenges that come with that, which are related to sort of commercial models and all the rest of it. But I think that that's where I'd really like to see some growth, because I think that is a much better way of delivering search rather than just typing in a Boolean and looking at CVs one by one. That is a universal thing which most people are going to be doing day to day, and I think that is more impactful actually than the formatting piece.
Of course,
But as I say, we are limited in our scope to just be able to offer that in the UK at the moment. But we'd like to, sort of start to expand that to other territories as well.
Which there's no reason why you can't, absolutely. And I think from a leverage point of view, like you say, that's where, this solves a problem universally, regardless of where you sit in the recruitment market. Where does this sit with regards to the AI journey that the industry is currently on? Because, I feel like the adoption that has occurred over the last couple of years has actually blown my mind. When I think back to 2022 and 2023, when I first started talking about AI and the AI integration into our industry and this evolution that we're in, it almost felt a little bit like, we were sat there with a crystal ball going, what's going to happen? But I know even my small, little humble business, we've gone on a massive AI journey over the last 12, 18 months. And, we've done it, we've reassessed the business, and we've got a brilliant tech stack, even with such a small company. And it's just fun. It's just phenomenal. It's just easy. It's things aren't adding to my headache. It's just taking away all the headache. So where do you see what you're offering as part of that? And then let's make it more generic again and talk about where you think AI evolution's at.
So I think that okay, cool. So I think that there's a lot of tools out there, and these focus on just about every single part of the job. And I think that there's going to be plenty out there that I'm not aware of, and plenty that are. I think that the big hype topic at the moment is agents, right? And having people sort of effectively get replaced almost entirely, whether that's pulling in leads, whether that's actually engaging in conversations with candidates. And I must say, I've always been incredibly skeptical that that's something that people would want for themselves, but also would want to engage with at a candidate level, and definitely not at a client level. However, look, I mean, I don't know if you've sort of seen some of these things running. They're now very, very, very good. So it's I don't know. I think that the perspective of whether this is generally a good thing for the industry depends on whether or not you run that business or whether or not you work in that business. I think that if you're working that business, there are some major threats there with it. But I think making the positive case for this, and limiting this to more what we're focusing on, we're focused on the things that we know take time, and we're leaving because I don't believe, and I'm skeptical about sort of replacing people from having conversation. I think that what our focus is very much on is giving time back. It's, in my view, wasteful to be doing things like formatting CVs. At this point, it's a solved problem, and I think search is one of those things as well where it just takes a very long time. So it's for us to be able to serve you the results, which you can then manually check, means that we can offer a big impact. The pace of change in the sector is unbelievably rapid.
Yeah.
And I think that particularly around agents and having agents then engage with people and start to have conversations, if we go back, say, 12, 18 months, I wouldn't have believed that it would have been possible to get that working to a degree where candidates would ever want to engage with it. But as I say, you sort of look at the tech demos now from some companies offering that as a solution. it's uncanny. It's scarily uncanny.
I know it is.
Yeah.
And I think you get two kinds of people. I think you get those people that will adopt and want to integrate the agents and are probably maybe even sort of designing their own unique agents, as you've said. And I've spoken to plenty of founders, not in this guise, but in my day job that are doing that. And you also get those people who think, well, my clients, my candidates don't want that. They
Yeah.
still want, and that's where having AI for, running your business and doing all the things that you said in terms of utilizing it for the non-influential parts.
Yeah.
I very much sit in the latter camp, by the way, because I firmly believe that in a lot of industries, I imagine it where it's technical based, maybe that is feasible. I've yet to speak to any founder, or I do a lot around senior leadership, that would want to speak to, and I do ask this question, by the way, and I have done last year or so. But it remains to be seen, and maybe that's just fear factor on my part, because I'm like, well, if that's the case and they'd rather speak to an agent rather than me, then
Yeah, I mean, I just don't buy. I mean, I think that it's such a nuanced thing, moving jobs. But actually, I think, for senior people and also for people who are sort of a lot steadier and don't sort of take these sort of decisions lightly, it's an incredibly big decision. And there's tons of reasons why someone would move. And I feel that if I was a candidate, I would want to be heard. I'd want to be listened to. I'd want someone to be in my corner.
yeah,
And, I'd want a relationship there. And I'd want to feel that there's trust and what's being recommended to
yeah,
me suits my needs. And so at its core, it's always going to be a consultative selling job if done well, recruitment.
agreed.
That's not true of all sectors, I suppose. Sometimes it is more transactional, but I think
Agreed.
that particularly for perm and mid to senior level hires, I can't see it. But as I say, I think the pace of change is
Rapid.
so quick. And perhaps it's the case that you have to be made aware that you're talking to an agent and not a person.
Yeah.
And maybe at that point, then there is an ability to either side to engage or not. But at the moment, I'm not even sure if you actually have to declare that, and if the businesses that do offer these solutions do say, "Look, you're talking to an agent." I'm not sure, but
And I also think that we've got a choice, haven't we? So if let's say I was engaging with a recruitment firm and that was their choice to engage on that basis, I personally would choose not to, because I wouldn't want to speak to an agent that wasn't a human, in the same way that when I have got an issue with, or I want to speak to somebody at Vodafone or somebody
yeah,
at Octopus Energy or whatever, I will, and we use Atlas actually, and shout out to Atlas, because we moved to them last year as our new CRM, and they've
yeah,
got built-in agents, but it will say, do you need to speak to a human? And I'll go, yeah, I need to speak to a human, and within minutes I'm speaking to a real person. So I think there's definitely that
yeah,
choice factor, where I think whilst we still have the choice, then I think we all need to be very careful of that. But I do think I think you're right, and we said off camera, didn't we, that the rate of change is like it's speeding up. That's the truth. And I think it would be real folly to think that you are not going to be impacted by it in whatever capacity. So
yeah,
for me, where you sit as a brand and what you do and the contribution that you will make is, it should be about saving time. It should be about making me more efficient. So
yeah,
if I had a team of recruiters, which, I mean, we're a very small business, but if I was running what was Accordant that back then, I would say, well, let's save those 3 hours and get out and meet some clients. Let's take them for lunch. Let's go and sit with them and talk through their strategy for
yeah.
hiring.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, totally. I think that the other thing as well, which is interesting, is just going to be from a costing point of view. I think that fundamentally, all these big AI companies lose money, and a lot of it. And I think that there is a concern there, perhaps, about, well, if you are, a customer of one of those firms and relying heavily on it, is there a point in which the price of that has to rise in order to be able to stop the loss? I mean, that cannot be sustainable indefinitely. So I do wonder whether or not it is going to be possible to deliver things at a cost point which would ultimately make it sellable. At the moment, the argument would be that, okay, it is going to be cheaper than sort of having someone on board. Maybe, maybe not. But I think that the price may well rise, I think. But yes, we shall see.
Yeah, well, it's like anything, supply and demand, right?
Yes, well, at the moment, I mean, I mean, the supply is there, and I think the demand is there, but I think it's one of those where that they lose a tremendous amount of money every year. They're the sort of main providers. So I think that those businesses that rely very heavily on that may end up with sort of big price increases down the line to their customers, perhaps.
Absolutely. So as someone who came in as a developer sort of, as a second career, so to speak, what's next for you? What other skills do you have under your hat, Lawson?
I don't know. I think that's, I mean, career-wise, I don't know. I'm very much focused on this, but I mean, in general, I'm one of those people who just generally likes learning how to do things themselves and just sort of giving things a go. My passion project at the moment actually is I bought a very old Jag, which I absolutely love. I'm in the process of just doing that up, and I think that it's quite nice to be able to get up on jacks and then sort of just see how it all works and take it apart and put it back together and yeah, get it all tuned up. But yeah, I absolutely love it. So
There's a metaphor right there in terms of
yeah,
recruitment. I'm sure the old Jag, prime time / cordon, going under the bonnet, having a look at how it all works.
quite possibly.
Good luck with that, Lawson. That sounds very exciting and definitely not something I would ever risk doing, because I'd probably end up doing something or cutting a wire and making it far less efficient. But we're really excited to see what happens with CVME, because we know that it's relatively new on the market, and I know that you had a very successful expo. So good luck with that. If anybody listening or watching is interested in having
Yes.
a demo with Lawson, make sure you mention the Recruiters Recruitment podcast when you're contacting Lawson. All the contact information will be attached to this episode wherever you're listening or watching. And thank you so much for joining us on the Recruiters Recruitment podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much.